Howdy, and welcome back to the Wild West in my workshop. In today's episode, we're going to be working on the Beaudry number 11 power hammer. Previously on fixing the Beaudry, we got the hammer unloaded, taken apart, cleaned, and coated. Now today, to kick things off, I've got to get the big 4-inch round, fine-threaded tension set screws out of the spring box of the hammer. One is awfully stuck and is an absolute animal to wrestle around. All right. With the spring box degreased and with the tension set screws out of it, I'm going to throw it into our rust remover and see what that does. I'm going to leave it for quite some time. Oh my gosh. Literally just barely fits in there. All right, we let it sit overnight and see how we did. It looks like it's still rusty. You know what? We're just going to take it outside and spray it down with some water. Time to coat the spring box with some rust converter and then move on to cleaning, degreasing, and coating all the other parts and pieces. Alright, first things first, for reconstructing the hammer, is going to be putting the gib back on the frame. So good. This is the nut that controls the depth of where that gib sits. All of the random, weird problems that you run into with power hammers. It's just so good. Oh, it just needed a little PB blaster, I guess. So that's cool. Perfect. Now the purpose of this gib right here, the reason that it's tapered is so that first off, you can adjust the tension of how much slop you have playing around in the ram, and then also so that as these bronze wear plates here are wearing down, you can adjust and take up the slack. So we've got our ram guide on there. Next step, we're going to go ahead and put the brake system back on. The reason we're going to do that now is because there's nothing in our way. But once we get the whole linkage and ram back in here, boy oh boy, there's going to be things in the way. Here's the main brake housing. This is the thing that has the shaft that goes through the frame and the hammer up here. Here we go. So this right here is the big nut that holds the brake in. And it's the one that it's nearly impossible to get a wrench into because you see, wrench is definitely not going to fit like that because I'm hitting this kind of concave casting of the Beaudry. It's like a middle school dance, you know, just like awkward and uncomfortable and just bad for everyone involved. I'm very fortunate that this brake didn't need to be relined. That stuff up there, that gasketing material, that's the stuff that actually puts kind of friction on the brake, was still like really good. Our next step here is to get the ram back into the old frame. We're back in business. Slip rate. One of the hardest parts of putting these hammers back together is getting these spring arms with the rollers set in the right place. Fortunately, my friends at Strong Hand Tools hooked me up with some of their absolutely wicked clamps, which will allow me to clamp this here spring arm into the right spot with the roller in the right place and not have to worry about it falling out. Alrighty, we'll let the spring arms sit in there for now while we put on the rest of the linkage. I may have to make another one of these at some point, but we'll see how this one does for now. We got our main washer here, and then after that, it's time for the big nut to go back on. Tighten down the big nut! So before we put the spring box in, gotta get this key that attaches onto. You gotta do it like that. Next, we're going to drive in this wedge, which is what locks that in so that it can't move. Perfect. This is the set screw that holds that wedge in place. That thread's in there, and then this is the lock nut to keep it from backing out during use. Next up is the fun part, which is somehow managing to get these spring arms up into the spring box and tightening down the springs. Having a little issue, big issue, medium-sized issue, 12 ounce, with getting this tension set screw into the spring box. It doesn't want to go. I'm gonna try swapping over the set screw from the other side and seeing if this one fits over there. This will let us know whether or not it's the set screw or the internal threading that's the issue. I think we have our answer. I think it's the threading. Thank the good Lord. This one would need to go in maybe another turn or two, but we'll leave it there for now, and we'll take out the other one and work on that. When I first got this hammer, these two things were tuned really poorly. This one was backed out to just about where it is right now, which means that it wasn't contacting at all, wasn't setting any spring tension on one of the arms. And the other one was pushed way too far in, which you don't want either. So basically, they're supposed to be kind of equally putting pressure on, and they had one backed out too far and one pushed in way too far. And that's how they ran this thing. Now that I'm trying to put this back in, this is the one that was backed out too far, and it's just basically not going in past the point where it was originally backed out to. There's a thread right around where it's catching that's maybe been, I guess, kind of abused a little bit. So we'll try filing on that. I'm gonna spray down the set screw with some layout fluid to see where it's contacting and being held up. While we're waiting for that to dry, we're gonna head into the grinding room and wire wheel off the treadle and get that thing bolted back on to this here power hammer. Alrighty. We have our culprit. You see how we've got a little bit of contact kind of all the way along, and then as soon as we get to this thread right here, it's like, bam, full contact all the time, all the way around. We're gonna file it down because it's hecked. I think we may have done it, boys. Why did they put this tension set screw in prison? Because he was a threat to society. You know what I might do? I might hook up my die filer. Because I think we figured out that I'm really just gonna have to file out the whole rest of these threads. What I decided to do was whip out the old die filer, and by old I mean it's old, but I just got it. And I'm gonna use a triangle file in the die filer, and the die filer just basically files for you, it's cheating, to clean up the rest of these threads to make it so that I can get the set screw into the diggity dadgum spring box. Here we go. So we've had a victory. We got that set screw in. It didn't really get any easier past a certain point, but with a cheater bar, I was able to just kind of like send it, and that worked out okay. But now really what we need to do in order to see and be able to tune it is get this thing to the point where, you know, it has a motor hooked up to it. And that might be a second, because I don't have a motor or a motor tower built, or all of the flywheels that I need. So, next step is gonna be getting the tensioning arm pinned in up top there. We've got a set screw and a big pin that goes through right there in order to make this thing go. Okay. Yes, cotter pin. Oh. Stuff like this is gonna give me back problems when I'm older.
100%.
Hundo P. Next step, be painting on our gold letters. Here we go, I'm gonna degrease it first. I don't think it's actually all that greasy. I'm gonna use this gold paint pen to do my letters. I think this S is upside down. It's smaller on the bottom than it is on the top. Dude who's putting the letters on is a crunk. Now, a cool and rare thing about this hammer is that it came with both original acid-etched brass plates, both of which need a ton of cleanup. How good does that look? We're almost there. Well, now that we've got the whole hammer linkage and the brass plates cleaned up and the whole hammer is looking, we're gonna have to call it there. I still need a few things for this. I need to fix the treadle system. I need to build a base for it because it can't sit on machinery skates its whole life. I need to find some looking glass oilers for it. I need to find a 10 or a 15 horsepower motor for it. So if you guys know where any oilers or large motors, low RPM motors are, give me a shout, because I need to find those things. I also need to find a surface grinder, so if you have any large-ish surface grinders available, let me know. I'm interested. A couple other announcements. Next week, probably won't be getting a video out as I'm gonna be in Tennessee hanging out with Jason Knight and Kurt Holland, and then zipping from there on down to hang out with Steve Schwarzer and Laura down in Florida. We'll be getting a video about that out probably a little bit later on. So it's gonna be a little bit slow coming up here, but we're not quitting YouTube, like I know some of you guys are going to assume. Don't deny it, you know it's true. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and check out Patreon if you want an extended cut of all of the videos that we're doing here. It's the best way to support Isaiah and I as we're kind of get rocking and rolling here, because, well, starting a business is hard. So if you want extended cuts, behind the scenes content, and your name in the credit rolls of all of the videos, go check out the Patreon. It's linked in the description here. And if you guys are looking to follow along on our adventures down in Tennessee and Florida, follow us on Instagram, as that's going to be the place that we're going to be posting the most during that time. Thank you guys. I'll see you on the next one.